Game is about to come out. It's doomed to fail. Steam charts come out. Numbers are good. There's hope. Steam charts go down. Doom. Game shuts down and everyone is fired. That's what happened with Highguard at least, but in the midst of these discussions are the critics of looking at these metrics in the first place. Most people who engage with this discourse online are either the ones trying to determine a game's chances of failure using the charts, or criticizing others for doing so. I see where the complainers are coming from. Video games are a form of art, and to view them solely through a lens of consumption goes against that notion. But in recent years, especially with live service games, these metrics can give a glimpse of more than just a game's popularity. There's tons of examples of both live service failures and successes in the past couple of years that were pretty well telegraphed using Steam charts. Concord, the most prolific of all, released to a whopping 697 peak concurrent players. That's an easy one. It was dead on arrival and the studio shut down shortly after. Highguard was a bit more complicated. It released to an actual whopping 97,249 players. What followed was an immediate steep drop, then a consistent decline in its small player count, ending with another high-profile game shutting its servers and studio down in a few days from when this video goes up. For the record, I had a lot of fun with Highguard when it launched. The game had many flaws, but it also had a lot of potential, though sadly it was clear that potential wouldn't be realized. The writing was on the wall when it couldn't maintain 10,000 average players in the month following its launch, and with so many games to play, and knowing its main issues weren't going to be fixed, I gave up on it. I'm sure my sentiment was shared with many others, and it's an interesting example of how Steam charts can directly affect player engagement. Not many people want to back a dying horse. Last week saw the release of Marathon, Bungie's latest game, an extraction shooter, which you're seeing gameplay of right now. I've been enjoying it quite a bit, but I've noticed the conversation around it, especially at launch, has seen about as much attention on the Steam charts as the game itself, and I feel like this conversation is reaching a head. It launched to a peak of 88,337 players, and it's maintained a similar average as of the writing of this video. Plus, the free server slam test taking place a week before launch surely helped in fostering a launch audience that was willing to give the game a fair shot. While of course nobody knows how Marathon will pan out in the long term, these numbers are good, and more importantly, are worth talking about. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, Slay the Spire 2, a co-op roguelike indie game, launched the same day as Marathon, with an astounding 574,638 players. This of course is incredibly impressive, and speaks to the game's quality and people's reverence for the first game. But outside of immediate interest, those numbers don't really mean much for that game and the devs. The difference between 50,000 and 574,000 for a studio with no publisher to answer to pretty much comes down to an increase in profit that these devs deservedly get. The Steam charts numbers are not as useful a tool in determining its success as they are for a game like Marathon. In the end, it's just a piece of a much larger pie, and while it isn't helpful to obsess over Steam chart numbers for every game that releases, when applied correctly, those numbers can indirectly impact the future of that game or franchise, and the livelihoods of the people who create them. To put the focus back on Marathon, there's a larger conversation to be had about Sony's push and pull with live service games, but it's clear that they believed Bungie could provide a lot of value in this endeavor. This has been a failure for Sony for the most part, with many of those risky live service bets not taking off. Sony needs Marathon to be a success, or else I don't believe there's much of a future for Bungie as a studio. That would mean no more Marathon, obviously, no more Destiny, and most importantly, no more work for the hundreds of incredibly talented developers at Bungie. Video games take lots of money and lots of time to create, and where is most of the money being spent? To pay the people that create them. Not very well, of course. When a game takes 5 to 7 years to be made, a perceived failure in player numbers, especially in live service, will oftentimes lead to disaster. This can range from minor disappointments, like long-term support for the game being cancelled, or more extreme measures, like layoffs and studio closures. While it isn't quite the smoking gun some make it out to be, an accurate number of the amount of people playing a game is a pretty damn good measure of interest, and in turn, a good measure of where the game stands at launch, and where the studio stands in the wake of the game's release.